Hi everybody, back for another video. Today we're going to be putting this frame that we just did the assembly video on back on this car. So what you're going to see is me rolling, well, I probably won't show me rolling it over there, but I'm going to roll this frame over to the car, get it under the car. Then what you're going to see is me lining it up on the body. And I'm going to do that by taking this 5/8 bolt, putting it in this hole, and there's a corresponding hole in the body, and there's one on each side, so I got two of these. These are just extras, and that's going to get it reasonably in place. And then I'm going to measure from this flat side of this frame to the pinch weld on the side of the rocker panel on the bottom. And it needs to be consistent front to back and left to right, so that'll get the frame squared under the car. That's going to be my stopping point for a while, because I need to get the Detroit Speed subframe connectors and the measurements for cutting the floorboards and getting those installed is extremely precise. So that'll give me a chance to double check that my frame is in the right spot. And above and beyond that, I would probably get the frame on, and what you won't see is me going through this off camera. You'll see me get the frame pretty much on the car, and it'll be good enough to where if you did a little bit of measuring, you'd be fine for a street toy. But I'll probably get this done, and this is measurements out of a book. It's not all of the measurements, it's just the important ones, and it is symmetrical. So if I go from the center of this hole to the center of that hole, and this is the 5/8 small hole that I'm going to put that bolt in to help line it up. I'll use a tram when I do that. I'm going to make the tram. So I'll be getting real picky off camera and getting this frame squared up. And then I'll probably take it to a mechanic shop and put it on a digital alignment machine and check the setback. And that's the front tires being equal to each other or not, as far as forward and back. One tire forward in front of the other one or back. The setback on this car should probably be slightly negative, which would be the left wheel would be ever so slightly back. But that all depends. It varies. So what you'll see me put the frame on the car, get it pretty much lined up. I'll check all these measurements, and I'll do that off camera, because you don't want to see me climbing around for 6 hours with homemade tram. So I'll do this off camera. I'll take it to an alignment shop and get it checked out there, and then I'll do the couple of floorboard patches, and then I'll be putting in Detroit Speed subframe connectors. So let me explain something else real quick. I'm going to get the tripod, and I'll be right back. Okay, so before I get too carried away, I want to finish showing you this. This is what I'm going to do off camera. Let me try to get this lined up. And I don't know that you can see it well, but this is a 79, and that's what this chart's for. I'm not an artist, but these are the measurements that are in the frame chart. This is the front subframe, this is the front bushings, and the back bushings. So that 5/8 hole, which is where that bolt's at to help me get the frame started to be lined up, is going to be a measurement point. And like I said, it's going to take a long time, so I won't be filming that. But these are the measurements, and I'll take a picture of it and get a nice copy on the video so you can see it better. But I wanted to talk to you about the bolts. This is a cheaper bolt. This is possibly a stainless steel bolt that you could buy at a hardware store. It's a 5/8 bolt. These things came factory with grade 5, I believe, which is really amazing that they did that. The grade 5 is not the greatest. I mean, most of these things, when you take the frame off, the bolts are so rusted you wonder how it was staying together. You know, the bolt didn't break. But people will buy these cheaper bolts instead of paying the price for the good bolts. And especially when you're using Detroit speed motor or body mounts. Hold on a second. This is a Detroit speed mount, and it's going to go on the frame this way. I'm having a hard time seeing with the glare, so anyway, there it is. So I'll put this Detroit speed on there, and it goes with the silver washer. Has like a beveled side that goes down, the flat side goes to the bushing, and the washer is to protect the aluminum from the bolt, you know, chewing into it. This flat surface goes against the body, this goes through the frame, then this interlocks, and it's solid motor mount, or solid body mounts, and they're solid aluminum. This is anodized aluminum. They have these in different heights too. This is Detroit speed, and these are normal height. But these bolts, most of these are no better than a grade 3. It depends on what you buy. So if you're looking to cheap out on these, you're going to make a big mistake. Sure, they're stainless, and that's good for when you're using aluminum. And what you want to use antices, don't put these in without antices, and they'll gall, get stuck. You'll see all kinds of problems. So what you need to do is, this is an ARP bolt. Now this is a a 17.4 stainless steel. ARP makes it, and it's sweet. It's just what you need. They are pricey, but they're worth their weight in gold as far as I'm concerned. It's holding my frame on, and it's stainless steel, which is what I need. It's the right grade of stainless steel, and that company actually does pretty good quality control, so I imagine this is a pretty good bolt. But these others, the grade's just not there. You just don't want to cheap out. I mean, you could probably get away with, I don't even know, 10, 20, 30 bucks for cheaping out with these cheap stainless steel from a hardware store. But you're probably getting grade 2, grade 3. I'm not sure what the equivalent of the 17.4 is, but it's a lot better than that. Better than the grade 5, I would imagine, that came out. The cheap ones are usually grade 18.8, but why guess? You know, ARP's got it done for you, and I also bought those from Detroit Speed, but those are about 110 bucks for 6 bolts. So, well worth it. I hate to say it, but it's true. So anyway, I'm going to roll this frame up under the car, and I'll get you set back up on a tripod, and you can watch me get the 5/8 bolts on the frame to go into the body to help me get the initial alignment. And I'll measure from the pinch weld to the frame, and I'll make that equal front to back and left to right, so that if it's 5.5 on one side, it's going to be 5.5 on the other side, and that's all the way from the front to the back. So, and then I'll do all these measurements off screen. So, and I will put up a picture of that little drawing I got there, give you some measurements if you want them for yourself. So anyway, I'm going to do that. I'm going to roll the frame up there and get started. I'll get you back in a little bit. Okay, so I'm pretty well set up. What I did was I rolled the frame up here. I got it close, and I just eyeballed it, no big deal. I went ahead and took the upper part of the bushing and put it in all 4 spots. The upper part is the part that goes through the frame. Then this is the receiver for the bottom. It goes over the shaft, it locks it in, and this goes with the bolt, so the bolt head's not turning on the aluminum. Plus it separates the head of the stainless steel from the aluminum, because that's not a good combination, hence the anti-seize. And I'm a little nervous about anti-seize, not really for any good reason, but I'll be checking the torque on these bolts, you know, for a good while occasionally after I get the car out. So anyway, I'll get this started. I want to try to get a bolt started in this hole and get it to fall into the body hole. Well, that's started. And this isn't easy, because a 5/8 bolt just fits in that hole, so I've already cleaned out these holes on the frame, the bolt holes with the nuts inside there for the body mount bushings. I cleaned them out with a stiff plastic brush. It's one of those engine cleaning brushes. It's pretty stiff. And some WD-40. I ran that through there with a drill, cleaned out the threads the best I could. I already put anti-seize in there and test fitted one of the generic bolts, but it's the same thing, same pitch and everything. So anyway, don't forget your anti-seize. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and move forward a little bit for as long as we got light. So right now I'm just going to run this bolt up in there. And the bolt should wind up being reasonably straight. I don't think I'll get the front one started yet. No, not yet. I may have to jack up the frame a little bit in the front. Let's see, I want to see if the back is touching. So, be right with you. All that dust is off of me, guys, sorry. Okay, I'm going to try and get the other 5/8 dowel bolt that's used for the alignment on the other side. I'm going to try and get the back bushing on that started. I may have to put the floor jack under the center of the frame and bring it up to the body, and once it's attached I can get it where I want it. So right now I've got the left rear bushing is snugged down, then backed off one full turn. So I'll get the other one started, then we'll do the front too. Okay everybody, let me show you where I'm at. Sun's getting ready to go down. Had the grandkids over, that was kind of fun, so took up some of the day. I'm kind of out of time, so I'll start again tomorrow. Let me just show you. I have both of the back motor mounts in place. They were the first ones to touch. The front's going to have to be jacked up. I'll put this jack stand here in the middle and use a 4x4 to cushion the paint a little bit, and I'll raise it up an inch or so to get the bolt started in the front. So the back ones are in place, and plenty of anti-seize on the bolts. And what I did was I seated them down. I didn't make them tight. I just seated them down to where they were going to be tight, and I backed them off a full turn, so there's a little bit of movement there if I need it. But you can see the alignment bolt going through that hole, and it's going right into the body. That's going to hold the frame reasonably in place while I measure and slide around and get things straightened up. So let me show you the other side. Now in the body, the hole is kind of egg-shaped. It's oval, it's not round, and it's probably just for tolerances going down the assembly line. But the hole in the frame itself, it's a round 5/8 hole. So as long as the bolt looks straight when it's all said and done and the measurements come out, we're good. I'll try and show you the pinch weld real quick just so you know. I have no clue what the lighting's like under here, but not terrible. Here's the pinch weld right here at the bottom of the rocker, and there's the frame. I'm going to measure in a straight line to the frame and make sure it's the same distance left and right from the pinch weld to the frame. And that's not perfect because, you know, things happen to pinch welds. They get pushed over, you know, so that's what the other measurements are for. There's gauge holes in the back frame as well. You can use those holes and you can cross measure and do X measuring and V measuring and get the frame in there square. But like I said, it takes 6 hours to film that because I'm going to be kind of picky about it, so you don't want to see that. But these bolts in the front mounts and measuring from the pinch welds, a lot of guys call that good. So somewhere along the line, it's up to you where you want to call it good. So anyway, I want to call it quits for a night, pick up my tools. First thing in the morning, I'll get back at it. Okay, so we're going to get back at it. It's the next day. Spent a little time with the grandkids and stuff, so ran out of daylight, which is fine. So right now what I'm going to do is I'm going to jack up the center. I got a little small floor jack there, piece of wood to protect the paint. I'm going to jack it up and close this gap and go ahead and get these front two bolts started. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, that closed up the gap pretty good. And let me show you on this side, there's other ways to fix this. These big nuts for the frame bolts, there's usually a cage in there that's welded to the pocket that gives this thing a little bit of room to move around, but it catches the corners so it won't spin. The cage is completely missing on this car. It's been that way forever, so I just have this piece of metal on there so it'll have something to catch when I'm trying to tighten. You can get those cages if you want to go that far. I just haven't done it. Maybe I will someday. So that closed up the gap pretty good. So I'm gonna put some anti-seize on this bolt. Now I'm going to cover it really good all the way down to the bottom of the threads. This is stainless steel and it needs this anti-seize, so please do it. And the point is that aluminum and steel don't get along, and you don't want to put a steel bolt through there as well, because it'll corrode, and then you're going to be looking at cutting holes in your floorboard to get them loose after they sit there for a while and corrode. Yeah, aluminum and steel, it just doesn't get along, so the more anti-seize on there, the better. And the anti-seize isn't just because the aluminum and steel don't get along. It's also to keep the stainless steel from galling. I don't know this grade of bolt how much galling would happen. Galling is when it doesn't take much. You could almost do it by hand. Put this bolt in a vise, put a nut on there, well, at least a cheap one, and start spinning the nut down with a ratchet, and put it down and up a few times, and it'll actually automatically start to gall and seize up. And once it's stuck, you're done. It's break it or whatever to get it off. But I would imagine ARP knows what they're doing. So but it still suggests to use it, so we're going to. Okay, it's starting to pull the frame up, but I need the weight off of the bolt so I can tell when it's snug and I can get it that one turn loose. So I'll finish closing that gap, hopefully. There we go. Okay, that's about to turn loose. Now we're going to do the other side, so let me get it set up. Okay, here we go with the other side. Need to do a little anti-seize on this side as well. Yeah, sometimes the trick to this stainless steel is to take your time. You take your time and it won't get hot and it won't go. But the anti-seize sure is going to help. So turn them slow, you'll have no troubles. Getting them back out, turn them slow, you'll have no troubles. Okay, there's tight enough anyway for right now. And we're going to back it off about a full turn. Gives you a little bit of room for movement so it's not tight. It'll still slide now. So those pins are pretty straight. and that's a good guideline. It's not perfect, but it's a really good guideline. That's probably the same holes they used going down the assembly line, so that looks reasonably straight over there. This pin looks reasonably straight, so I'll do some measuring. Alright, I'm going to move the camera so you guys can see what I'm going after. Pretty self-explanatory on this, guys. The pins are straight. Way up here, it's right around 6.5, and I'm not being really picky right now because I want to check the other side too. So let me run over and check the other side. This side's about 6.5. Okay, the other side's about 6 to 6.25, so it'll be somewhere around 6.25, at least for this particular car. Just make sure that your car is square left to right. So if it's 6.5 on one side, it needs to be 6.5 on the other. Or if it's 6.25, it doesn't matter. Make sure it's the same. So before we call this quits though, and I do some serious measuring, which you really don't want to see, so I'm not going to record it. Let me show you a bushing. Okay, before we quit, I want to show you these bushings. So these are hard-coated aluminum. These two here are going to be left over in my case because this kit is for F-body, but these actually fit the Camaro radiator support better than it fits my car. I could modify my radiator support to use these if I really wanted to, but I would be much better off just to get a black or a red polyurethane bushing and put it in there. I mean, for the radiator support it would be just fine, so I don't need to do any cutting and modifying of my radiator support. So these will be left over. They're a little bit smaller of a bushing for the radiator support. They have the same bushings for where the bolt head goes, the same washers, and they have a set of washers for the nut side, because the two bolts that came with the kit, they have bolts and nuts. So the washers for the nut side, and the tapered washer, the bigger one, is for the bolt head side. And you would probably still want to use anti-seize, so just wanted to point that out. So anyway, this frame is on. It's reasonably straight. I'm going to make it all the way straight now, so next video we'll be doing some sheet metal repair. I got one section in the very corner where the gas pedal's at. There's a golf ball size hole. I sealed it up so it could sit and keep the mice out. There's a small hole about maybe a quarter size in the trunk, right in one of the curves on the bottom of the floor. So when we're done, you won't even know they were there. So I'm going to section it out and seam it back together just like the factory did, and I'll grind the welds down, and the metal will be butt welded, so it'd be hard to tell it was there. And then we'll go from there. But next video we're going to do a little bit of metal repair, and then we're going to be putting Detroit Speed subframe connectors in. Once I get the floorboard solid like I want it, then I'll be doing that. And at that time, the subframe connectors, you measure those out pretty precisely, and then you cut your floorboard, and then you set those in the floorboard, and you can hold them in place with a big pair of C-clamp vice grips. And that will also tell you from the underside how close the frame is as well. It's just another reference point, because you cut really precision lines in the floorboard so they fit in there, and it should pretty much match up to the frame. If you have to do any tweaking of the floorboard, it shouldn't be much. It should be very little. So anyways, next video, a little bit of sheet metal work. Thanks guys. I'd like to add that these bushings here for the radiator support, you would just make those tight, you know what I mean, just tight, no special crank it real hard, just make sure it's tight. The actual subframe though, with these particular bolts and this bushing kit, this anodized hard aluminum, I'm going to torque the frame down to 85 foot-pounds. So, and you want to go by the manufacturer and what they suggest, because the people that make these things, they know best what works. But ARP and Detroit Speed I think they're both in agreement that 85 foot-pounds is plenty. So I'll torque these to 85 foot-pounds, and as I drive the car I will check them. I'm not worried, but I will check them, so make sure they stay at 85, and I'll probably even let you know how that goes. So anyways, that's just what I wanted to just fill you in on that. So 85 foot-pounds. These were the measurements I was talking about. All of them go from the center of the hole, and some of them you would need a tram to measure. And if you don't know what a tram is, you need to do some studying, because that's hard to explain. And if you want to use a tram, you need to get the car on a garage floor, get it nice and level, and you can use a level laying against a 2x4 that goes all the way across left to right on the pinch weld to get it level front to back. And then you want to use the tram as level as possible, which means if one hole is 10 inches away, you're going to need a probe that's at least 10 inches long. And if the tram is level with the floorboard of the car and the next hole is only 3 inches away, well, you're going to need a shorter one. So you need an adjustable tram with different sized posts to check these holes. So that's what I was saying. This isn't going to be easy, and I'm not going to record the whole thing, because I'm going to have to either make a tram or borrow a tram or buy a tram. It's not going to be fun. So it's just the way to do it accurately. Like I said, it's all about the car being reasonably level, and when you're using the tram, you want to keep it reasonably level. So if the car is level to the floor, the tram needs to be level to the floor. Or if you're measuring something on the top side and you have the pointers pointing down towards holes, you would want the tram to be reasonably level. And so you would need longer pointers for the different distance away from the tram the hole is. It's kind of difficult. There's all kinds of videos on how to use trams, and there's actually some good ones. So, but all of these measurements are from the center of the hole, which means if it's center, if you went to the left side of this hole, then you went to the left side of that hole, that's still center, unless it's an oblong hole. Usually they're all round. So anyway, that's what you're looking at. And it should be symmetrical. If this measurement going in this direction is that length, then the same thing from this side to the same hole over here should be the same. You can do an exit. You can make an X measurement. It'll help you get it square. So the whole thing should be symmetrical. That's how it went down the assembly line. So if one hole measures something like this one, then the other one should measure the same. So there you go.